you, everyone. Again, we'll call the Senate and House Judiciary Committee Conference Committee on House sub for Senate Bill 286 to order. Had a question for the House. We have seen that Senate Bill 286, we heard a little bit about its history. We had a bill, Senate Bill 286 last session that extended immunity for liability to certain healthcare providers if there were acts and or omissions that were a direct response to COVID-19. And we extended that, I'm talking loosely here in what the bill did, that it extended that immunity from liability for negligence, but not for gross negligence, not for willful, wanton, or reckless conduct. And we extended that as a legislature till March 31st, 2022. And I think the House then took it up this session, and we now have the bill that we're working on today. So my question would be, maybe it's a question for the reviser, maybe for our House colleagues, regarding new Section 1, interference with the conduct of a hospital. So that Section 1 creates a new crime. Is that germane to what the underlying Senate Bill 286 does? Or to me, 286, to the Senate, 286 is an act concerning liability for certain actions relating to the government response to the COVID-19 pandemic in Kansas. And then it talks about the crime that was added in Section 1 on the House floor. So is it proper, is it permissible? I guess that's a question for our revisers. Is it permissible to create a new crime in a COVID-19 pandemic response bill would be the first question, because the Senate didn't have a hearing on the content of new Section 1 and hasn't heard it before. If Ms. Scott, you're able to answer.
Madam Chair, we wouldn't really opine on whether we think something would be germane or not. That the contents that you're referring to and the changes made to the battery statute were added as a form amount on the floor. You noticed that we did make a change to the title. But in terms of whether that was germane or not, I would let Chairman Patton talk about that.
So, Madam Chair, there was no challenge to germaneness. I think the connection, the argument would have been, because at the time the amendment was offered by the majority leader, he did have me come down and ask some questions about the underlying bill, how it pertained to health care. And so I think he was trying to lay the groundwork that it'd be related, that they're both primarily related to health care. The base bill 2652 included telemedicine, the number of patients that could be treated in certain hospitals, temporary licensure for healing arts, and so there was a healthcare piece to it, but we never got to the germaneness issue because no one challenged it.
Thank you. And new Section 1, the Senate, like I said, hasn't heard it. They didn't hear any testimony. It's not content that has crossed the Senate floor. So there are some tweaks to propose to new Section 1 on behalf of the Senate. And one would be to could you let us know, first of all, what the intent of new Section 1 is?
Yes, Madam Chair. So that came to us as a bill 2620, which creates the crime of interference with the conduct of a hospital and then increased the penalties for battery of a healthcare officer. So again, that's the one that was brought to us by a number of hospital hospitals, by law enforcement, and by the prosecutors, and a number of other individuals that testified. So to create and enhance that crime, we heard testimony, and we've seen data that crimes against or battery against hospital workers has increased dramatically in the last couple of years. It's actually started prior to COVID, but it increased more during COVID. And so that was kind of the basis that they had for bringing the legislation to us. And that's what new Section 1 does.
Thank you. And it seems that our frontline healthcare workers have had a particularly challenging time these last 2 years in particular, and we thank them for their service in that regard. And again, though, looking at it from the Senate position, we don't have a Senate position on whether this is policy that, well, it's certainly not policy that we voted on or heard. So with that, then, the Senate would make an offer that it's already in law on page, what the sentence is if you, if there's a battery or an assault, I think it's a Class C misdemeanor, and the bill proposes to raise that to a Class A misdemeanor. Do I have that right from the revisor?
Madam Chair, so just a typical run-of-the-mill battery is a Class B person misdemeanor, and this bill would propose to elevate that to a Class A for healthcare providers.
So that's a position that the Senate could agree with if there were not the new crime created by the bill, but increase the crime that's already in law, that you can't assault or batter a healthcare worker. And if you do with this bill, then you will have an increased sentence as a penalty.
So that's an offer for us to discuss? Is that
That's
where we're at?
part of the offer to discuss, yes. Would you like the rest?
Yes, please.
Okay. The other piece that has not been heard by the Senate because it was a House floor amendment is on page 9. New section 5 regarding to, or excuse me, related to language on lines 12 and 13 and line 15, changing it to liability for damages, administrative fines, or penalties that arise out of or relate to. And then on line 15, it's changed from as a direct response, it's changed to related to. That is language that the Senate has not heard. It has not been heard in a committee and not run across the Senate floor. And for that reason, the Senate position is the language before it was changed on the House floor is language that the Senate has heard and voted on, and it's been across the Senate floor. So the proposal would be to change it to the language that was the Senate position in 2021 that was passed out of the Senate.
Just to clarify, so basically you're stripping out the House amendment that changed Section 5. Is that correct?
Yes, because that would be a position that the Senate hasn't heard in committee and it's not run across the Senate floor, and that would be the proposal.
And Also to clarify, so in section 1, you're proposing to remove, let's see, section 1A, B, C, or just, yeah,
It would be
removing all of section 1. Because in section
well,
2,
not where the part where the sentence is increased from a Class B to a Class A is kept,
and that's in
is retained.
section 2. That's in section 2.
So Section 2 increases the sentence for only one kind of battery, and that would be at, well, it would be Section 12 would be kept. And I understand these are conceptual right now, and we just haven't had the time to get this in written form, so we can do that with our revisers. We just haven't had the opportunity yet.
While we may not have the right sections, you're wanting to remove the new crime of interference with the conduct provisions, keeping current crimes, but you're okay with the enhancements.
Correct.
Okay, or increase. Got it.
And House colleagues, there's more. So no, that's okay. And also, since 286 is a COVID-19 response bill, essentially, and the section regarding liability has a sunset, then the Senate's position would be it also then makes sense to sunset the increased sentence enhancement as well. Yes. And then finally, that, and I'm not sure where exactly this would go, would need to ask the revisers, that to add in that really because the healthcare providers are with the bill, provided immunity from civil liability for damages, administrative fines, or penalties, that they not be able to deny treatment to anyone based solely on their COVID-19 vaccination status.
Madam Chair, we're going to step out for just a second to visit.
Great, thank you.
Madam Chair. So as you know, the bill that we have before us, our goal was to increase protections for hospitals, to increase protections for nurses and doctors. And if we were to accept the amendments as you proposed, we would be reducing those protections, which was not the intent when we heard either of these bills in Judiciary, nor when over 90% of those voting in the House voted for these. As we talked earlier, the leadership on our side strongly supports the bill before us, unamended, The amendments were offered by the majority leader and the speaker pro tem. The only person not involved in leadership was the speaker, and I think he also supports it. So we're certainly open to having a written amendment prepared that we can take to leadership, but our position, while I understand you've not heard it all, our position's quite strong in that our leadership team and our body strongly supported those amendments, and so to take them out at this point in time is not something we're willing to do without having the chance to run it by the various parties, run it by leadership, and see where they're at on this issue. So maybe the next step could be to get that in writing, and we could see who supports it or what we could come up with, maybe somewhere in between.
Well, it's good to work with you, Chairman Patton, because that was going to be my suggestion, that, as I said before, we didn't have time through no fault of the revisers, but we didn't have time to get it in written form for the House to consider and to take to leadership as well. So I think the next step is to get the proposal in writing and then get it over to our House colleagues and then continue from there. So to deliver the written form of the concept that we've introduced here today, do we need to do that in committee? And so we will then next convene, I had suggested 11 o'clock tomorrow. If there is a desire to do that earlier in the morning, I already have a 9 o'clock conference committee. We are on the floor at 10. So I thought 11 might be the first available time tomorrow. However, I am open to different suggestions.
I don't know the entire calendar on our side. I know we have several committees meeting at 8 and 9 and yeah, I mean, the sooner we can get the language, the better, right? Because we're going to have to simply exchange the language and then us take the language to go visit. And we are up against quite the time deadline on this bill if we're going to get it in place before the.
Well, let's stand at ease and see if our revisers can put something together in a relatively soon time frame, and we can at least then get it to the House, and you can consider it from there. The thought was, yes, stand at ease for 30 minutes so we could get it.
I mean, on my behalf, unless the revisers tell us we can't do this, I'm open to just sitting here by myself, and you guys then could distribute it to them. I mean, we'd have an open meeting where you'd pass it out, and then you guys could have it later, so everyone doesn't have to stick around. 'Cause
Right, it's up to you whether you
more than
stick
everybody
around or
else.
not, but we're going to have the meeting, so stick around or not if you like, so. Okay, then we will ask our revisers to reduce to writing what has been verbally proposed here, and we will keep the meeting open and await their good work then and deliver the offer to the House.
Can I just ask one follow-up question? So, and I don't know how this works. So when you guys get the amendment for us, do we post that somewhere? I mean, does everybody need to wait on it? Or does it go electronically somewhere?
Mr. Chairman, we would have paper copies here. We can also, if there is a member of the audience who intends to, not stay here, they can email Jason or I, and we can get that to them as well.
But we do not intend to take any action this evening, correct? Just so people don't sit around if they don't need to.
Correct. There won't be any action because it sounds like there's some discussion that needs to be had over on the House side with leadership. Committee, we will be in recess until 6 o'clock, till 5:45. We'll be in recess till 5:45. Thank you. Committee, thank you for standing at ease while our very capable revisers put together in writing balloon amendments that we verbally discussed, and we are passing that out to our committee meeting room folks who are present as well. And once that has been distributed, we will ask the reviser for an explanation.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm giving Natalie just a moment to share it on the live stream as well here. All right, there we go. So the Senate proposal was to insert a new section in lieu of the current new section at the beginning of the bill. And so we changed the title accordingly, prohibiting discrimination and rendering healthcare services based on a person's COVID-19 vaccination status or whether such person has a COVID-19 vaccination passport. And then I'll talk about the repealing thing there when we get to that in section 2. So the new section 1, that's struck and in its place. So that removes the crime of interference with conduct of a hospital and aggravated interference. In its place would be new section 1 that provides that the medical care facilities that are all listed there shall not decline to render healthcare services or otherwise discriminate in rendering healthcare services to a person based solely on such person's COVID-19 vaccination status or whether such person has a COVID-19 vaccination passport. And then those definitions will look familiar to the Senate, at least. Those are from SB 41, the same, 541 that define COVID-19 vaccination passport status and vaccine. And then the further change the Senate was requesting was in section 2 related to battery. This would leave section 2 in the law until January 20th of 2023. At that point, it would be repealed, and that's done on the final page. So if you wanted to see that, we just repeal it on January 20th of 2023. And after this section, we would put in as section 3, on and after January 20th of 2023, that statute as amended by section 2 is amended, so it would remove those amendments. So you have one set that's effective until January 20th of 2023, and then right after that, you'd have the version that would take over that has those provisions about healthcare providers and battery removed. So it's a technical way of doing exactly what you asked. And then on page 9, this would undo the floor amendment, restore the word for, and restore the words as a direct response. I think that's it.
So there's the written proposal that we had discussed verbally prior, and I understand you need to have some further discussions with the House and anything else for the good of the cause before we adjourn. All right, seeing none then. Committee then, thank you. And also for those who were in the committee meeting room and following along online, we will await to hear some response and feedback until, we don't really have a time yet. It had been 11 o'clock tomorrow, but I understand that that might not work.
I think 11 would work for us.
Oh, 11, okay,
11,
good.
It was early in the morning.
Earlier
would be a
wouldn't.
challenge, but 11
Okay.
should work.
Good, then I was correct in thinking that 11 o'clock might work. Wonderful. So with that, then, we will reconvene at 11 o'clock tomorrow, and the room will be announced later when we have it. And with that, thank you, and we are adjourned.